The worst part about having a mental illness is people expect you to behave as if you don't. Wrote down Joker in his book of jokes. Mental illnesses never seem to be understood by people who have never experienced them. It feels like it's one of those things that you have to experience firsthand for yourself to truly be able to grasp the concept. Many of our consumer brains have forgotten that mental illness affects thousands and thousands of people every day. And we have got to learn at least not to judge them if we can't understand them. The number of people who experience mental disorders in the US alone is crazy high. According to the National Alliance on Mental Illness, approximately 1 in 5 Americans experiences some form of mental illness each year. Big mental disorders that a lot of people live with and are mostly understood by the public include disorders like depression, schizophrenia, bipolar, and anxiety. What most of us fail to see is all the people who are wrestling with not so understood mental disorders. There are hundreds of different disorders one might experience, and most of them are not really yet understood, and a lot of them have no known cures. Some mental illnesses are so rare that most doctors never diagnose any patients with them in all of their careers. Mental illness isn't like having a broken leg. People don't see it. I think it's rather obvious that our evolutionary desires were evolved to understand that a paralyzed person can run a marathon or even shower alone. Nobody will ever blame the person for not being able to do something as basic as showering alone because we see their disability, we understand their disability. As humans, we seem to be able to understand things that we can see a lot more than what we know is there. As much as we want to say that we are super intelligent, godlike creatures, we are still based on and only based on experiences of our ancestors, or as it's known, evolution. And in our evolutionary history, for the most part, we only use what we could see, touch, or smell. That aside, mental illness has been on a rise since the start of the Industrial Revolution. We were probably healthier mentally all over. And this can be caused by many variables, but mainly it's an after effect of people not having to worry about basic physical needs as much. We don't have as many physical survival tasks daily, like hunting or running from animals. This caused us to rely a lot more on our heads. Overworking our brains over hundreds of years since we started using machines has made us more depressed, more unstable, and more disconnected from this reality. It's only in the new era of mankind where we have to know things on default that we might never be able to encounter. We all know that there are thousands of atoms in each of us, but really few of us truly understand and grasp that concept. People with mental disorders, in my opinion, suffer from the same problem. A lot of us know what mental disorder is, and a good portion of us have a basic understanding of them, but really few of us truly grasp and deeply understand the concept. So I started thinking, if there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people with not understood disorders, what can I do to help them? I did some research, and after hours of note taking, recording, and editing, here are top 5 rarest mental disorders you never knew about. Before I start the video, I just want to remind you to like the video and subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so you won't miss any of my future videos. It would really help me be able to make these videos. Making of these videos takes most of my day, and your support is all that makes it worth it. Copgirl Syndrome is one of those weird disorders that most people never come across in their life. The attacks from these syndromes are known as art attacks in the psychology community, and you're not going to believe what triggers these attacks. Works of art that are perceived to be beautiful by the individual. So basically, people with this disorder will have anxiety-like attacks when faced with works of art, usually paintings that they perceive to be beautiful. And it usually happens in settings with the presence of multiple paintings. Settings such as museums are the perfect example. These art attacks can cause a wide range of symptoms. These include rapid physical and mental anxiety, which can increase the heart rate to dangerous levels, disreaction, nausea, psychotic episodes, paranoia, and in most extreme cases, hallucinations. These attacks can be aside from artworks caused by natural events that the individual perceives as immensely beautiful. This is what one person with the disorder had to say when asked to explain what he experienced during one of his art attacks. I reached the point where one encounters sensation. Everything spoke so vividly to my soul. Ah, if I could only forget. This condition was only given a name in 1979, and at the time, 106 cases were documented. These cases were divided into three types, which got increasingly more intense the lower the type got. Around 38% of people with type 1 and 53% of type 2 individuals had prior psychotic history. Despite hundreds of cases since the condition has been given a name, it does not yet appear in the American Psychiatric Association's Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorder. Apothemophilia is another unbelievable disorder that you probably never heard of. This disorder is characterized by an overwhelming desire to cut off healthy parts of the body. Basically, people diagnosed with apothemophilia have an overwhelming desire to cut off their own healthy body parts. This disorder seems to be neurological, although there is an ongoing debate whether it's actually caused by neurological problems. Few studies were done, but none of them reach any other conclusion rather than more studies are needed. So no one can be sure what exactly causes this disorder. Those affected might attempt to cut off their own limbs. It's quite understandable why it's known as one of the more dangerous mental disorders. Most individuals surprisingly never seek help, and some are never diagnosed to begin with. There isn't any known cure for the disorder either, although a lot of people get help from behavioral therapy. Behavioral therapy, although not proven to be effective, has helped a lot of people with their disorders. This disorder actually got famous in the late 90s when a Scottish surgeon decided to remove the limbs of two otherwise healthy individuals who were desperate to have this done. There was never a clinical research on the disorder until 2004. Before that, all the publishes were only case studies. In 2004, Michael first published a first clinical research on the disorder, which gave rise to even more studies. In his studies, he found that affected individuals were more likely to want their left limb removed rather than the right one. He linked this to damage to the right partial lobe of the brain. We are getting deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole. Alien hand syndrome is characterized by the belief that one's hand does not belong to oneself, but that it has its own life. It's believed to be neurological as well. Affected individuals report having a normal sensation of their hands, but no control over it. They reported the hand to have its own will. The normal hand will stay under the individual's control, while the other hand feels like it's starting to be out of control of the individual, and having life of its own. This neurological disorder is usually caused by damage to the corpus callosum. Corpus callosum is the part that connects the two hemispheres of the brain. While having the episodes, the individual's hand might do unintentional goal-directed tasks and actions. The affected hand will perform inaccurate actions and may fail to follow any command. Unsurprisingly, there is no cure for alien hand syndrome. The individual might recover over time, but it's rare to fully recover, especially among individuals born with the syndrome. There have been cases where behavioral therapy has fastened the recovery, which is really fortunate. This disorder was first recorded in 1909 by a German woman. After her work, a lot of the research was done over the years, and now we know a lot more about the disorder. Alien hand syndrome seems to affect the non-dominant hand in the most cases, and in some cases the alien hand will try to harm the individual. Stanley Kubrick popularized the condition with his movie Dr. Strangelove. In Dr. Strangelove, one of the characters played by Peter Sellers suffers from this condition. Dr. Strangelove syndrome became an alternative name for the alien hand syndrome after this movie. This one is a much more serious one. Copgirl Syndrome is characterized by the feeling that one's loved ones have been replaced with an imposter. Basically, the affected individual feels like their loved ones have been replaced with copies of themselves. This makes the individual disconnect from the people around them, and in many cases the individual will feel paranoid around their loved ones as they see them as fake. Copgirl Syndrome, although possible for all, is more common in women rather than men. This syndrome is classified as delusional, and it has many symptoms. Unlike most mental disorders, this syndrome only affects one aspect of the affected individual. The individual will act normally at all times, unless when they encounter the person they feel has been replaced. The individual might admit that the copy is identical to the original, but they believe they can see through the person. In many cases, the individual will be violent towards the double, and may attempt to hurt them. The individual can become obsessed with the thought of finding the real person. Many different factors and disorders can cause this syndrome. It's thought to be mainly caused by the injury to the lesions of the brain. It can also be caused by disconnect of the visual cortex with the part responsible for face recognition. Others believe it's a result of underlying conditions such as schizophrenia, dementia, and Alzheimer. Copgirl Syndrome has no known cure, as expected. Treatment for some underlying conditions can help in some cases, but for most cases, most treatments are useless. This is one of those symptoms that you kinda have to live with for the rest of your life if you're diagnosed with. This syndrome was first described in 1923 by a French psychiatrist, and it wasn't until the 1980s when we came to understand the symptoms. Today we classify this syndrome as neurological, and we know it's primarily caused by lesions and injuries in the brain. Alice in the Wonderland Syndrome. Alice in the Wonderland syndrome is characterized by the individual's sense of body image, space, and time being distorted. This neurological syndrome includes a really wide range of symptoms. They might experience hallucinations, sensory distortion, and altered sense of velocity. Basically, the person will see distorted pictures, feel unreal sensations, and have a wrong sense of their own velocity. These symptoms in many ways represent the effects of psychedelic drugs, such as LSD and psilocybin. The individual becomes confused about the size and shape of parts of their body. That's where the name comes from. Most of the symptoms trigger panic and fear responses and can cause severe panic attacks. Most individuals experience this syndrome as kids and young adults and usually grow out of it, although it is possible to experience them in adulthood as well. What makes this syndrome weird is we have no clue what causes it. In over half the cases, the cause is still unknown. It just seems to happen randomly to children growing up. Although brain tumor and child use of certain cough medication can increase the likelihood of the individual developing the syndrome, there also isn't any test to diagnose people with, which means the doctors have to rely solely on patients' experiences. This syndrome also has no cure, so affected individuals just have to live with it. The only treatment that has helped people in a few cases is meditation. Meditation seems to lower the symptoms and it helps the person stay calm through them when they happen. This syndrome was first described in 1955 by a British psychiatrist, and he named the syndrome after the successful 1865 novel Alice in the Wonderland. These were top 5 rarest mental disorders that you probably didn't know about. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you won't miss any of my future videos. I'll see you all in the next video.